Right, welcome.
I was thinking we never get this many people in person at community group.
50, no, we sometimes do.
Yeah, but not for a while.
Well, we haven't done it for
It's
a while.
nice having everyone online now, you can see everyone.
Yeah, it's quite nice not having to move too far and go and buy milk, because I always forget milk. So it's nice to see you, Riv. Yeah, this is literally Leanne. Oh, yeah, love. This is literally the first one of these things that we've done since lockdown, and time has flown. I don't know about for anybody else. Like, things quieten down, but it's like it's flown by. We were thinking back to when lockdown first started. It seems like ages ago, but it's flown past. It's absolutely flown past us that time. We're thinking it's about time we did one of these things. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. It's nice to see all these faces, and some people we haven't seen for a long time. So that's really, really beautiful. So I don't really know what we're going to talk about tonight.
I'd love to know if there's anything people would like us to speak to. Like, there's been so many different conversations that we've had one-to-one with people about their experience of kind of what's been going on. And then I've done other calls where the virus hasn't even been mentioned. There's something else that people want to talk about. So if anyone has got something they'd love us to address, like, it is more of an open call than the normal community group.
Yeah.
But we'd like it to be relevant to who's here. So if anyone does have something, we'd love to hear it. Except from Mark, who's going to say something to make us laugh.
No, we're not going to talk about donkey birds. Well, I think everybody on this call has at some point come across the principles. I don't think there's anybody on this call who has never actually had any kind of exposure to the principles. And that's nice. That's nice. It means we can talk to everybody on the same kind of level, and makes life a bit easier. One of the things that Jen and I often try and help people find is a depth to life, because ultimately that is what the principles brings to people who start to inquire in this direction. Principles being a metaphor for, is that little Rach?
Yeah.
A metaphor for life, for existence. Say hi to Rach. Hi Rach, thanks for joining us, love. A metaphor for existence, a metaphor for how life works. Sydney Banks would say a metaphor for love or for God. Hiya Rach. And to me, it's one of the most important inquiries people can start to embark upon. Many people come to us and they come to us with a problem. Like, Dave, Jen, can you help me with this? I've got this problem. I really need some help. And one of the first questions I like to ask people is, okay, you've got this problem within your life, but I want you to answer this fundamental question first. Before we start inquiring into what life is doing, how it's showing up, what we think is right and what we think is wrong with life, what they did, what he did, what's happened, what's going to happen, what's maybe going to happen, what's not going to happen, is I'm curious to know, what is life? You come to me with this problem, with this inquiry about how to help you with life, but my question to you initially is, what is life? Where does it emerge from? Where did it come from? What created it? What is it to be alive? What is it to be in existence, to be human? What is it? I've asked that question to many a person, and not once have I ever got an answer of, I know exactly what it is. Some people have thrown ideas and concepts in my direction. Other people have just gone, I don't know. I don't know. It trips people up. That question of what is life? What is it? Here we all sit, living, completely bewildered and bewitched by our experience of life, yet very few people inquire, what is it? This fundamental question of existence. What is it? What is life? And it's a really interesting thing, because here we all sit. Every single one of us thinks they know something about something. We know something about life. Every single one of us. Now we could be an expert in whatever. We know something about life. Yet this fundamental question of what is life, we can't answer. Yet we think we know something about life, but we don't even know what it is. And to me, the greatest answer to any question is starting to gain understanding into life. Because as we start to gain understanding into life, we start to find a beauty, a magic, and answers. Anybody can find it. Absolutely anybody on earth can find it. The only thing we have to do, it's like the lottery. Apart from the odds are better. You know, you've got to be in it to win it. And it's towards what is life. Then you will start to find out. So I'll talk a little bit about that, about, well, what we always just talk about anyway. But Jen's just changing the Wi-Fi, just bear with us.
Hotspot's on.
It's on. Yeah, we're done. Yep, cool. You know, we'll talk a little bit about the unknown. You know, because ultimately when we talk about these three principles are completely and utterly unknowable. Anybody who says that they understand thought, I would ask them to drop that concept. Anybody who thinks they understand mind, I'd ask them to drop that concept. Anybody who thinks that they possibly understand consciousness, I would ask them to drop that concept and return back to an open mind of not knowing. Because fundamentally, that is our very essence as human beings. It is a state of unknown. Our very essence is the unknowable. So to start to find the unknowable, the unknown, to start to recognize the not known, is to start to find the nature of life. And it's a really interesting thing. This isn't something new that we're talking about right now. Sydney Banks would say, try and recognize you know nothing. Don't just say it, but truly mean it. Truly recognize this fact that we truly do know nothing. Jesus Christ would say, to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become like the child. What is a child? Well, it's somebody who doesn't think they know something about life, still sees magic and mystery and possibility. isn't limited by ego and concepts of what's right, wrong, good, bad, can't, cannot, possible, impossible. Their mind is free to create. And this kingdom of heaven we're talking about is obviously God's domain, the Creator's domain. What is the Creator? We are the Creator. Everything is the Creator. It's created. And so when we start to look in this direction, we're starting to look at, rather than looking at the form that life has taken, we're starting to look at the formless. Was it Lisa and I? Oh, no, it was Katie. Katie and I this morning, we were having a conversation. I think it was Katie. And when we were talking about no, it wasn't. It was a call before. My apologies. Katie's looking at me all perplexed. What? No, sorry, it was the call before.
After.
Was it after?
Yeah.
After, sorry. And I was saying to our client, we were saying, like, we spend so much time looking at what is created. What's happened there, love? Just bear with.
Oh, I think Leanne, by mistake, you've done like a screen share.
Thanks, Leanne. That's really nice. Beautiful. Thanks, love. You can show your face again, though, love. Nobody hold it against it. We spend, as human beings, and especially in the Western world, we spend all our time studying creation. Seeing what it does, seeing what it's capable of, seeing what its possibilities are, its potentials and its implications and its uses. But very few people spend time in reflection of where does all this creation actually come from. And to me, that has to be the bigger question. Because as we start to get a sense of that, we start to make sense of life. And as we start to make sense of life, what was previously invisible to us becomes visible. And as we start to fall into the unknown, into the unknowable starts to make itself known. It's not something you can get arrogant about and think that you know everything about it, because it truly isn't. You can truly know nothing about life, the essence of life. You can truly know nothing about it because it's not an egotistical intellectual pursuit. It's a spiritual, before intellect and ego, creation. So starting to get a sense of the principles is simply starting to go before creation, go before creation, go before this reality that we encounter as our life, and start to get a sense or a realization or an awakening into the essence that is ultimately the creative force of everything. And it's a beautiful thing to start to look for. And many people embark upon this pursuit. You know, we get many people coming to us going, oh, I'm a seeker. I'm like, well, where have you looked? I've read this book, I've read that book. I've read the Bible, I've read the Quran. You know, I've read the Torah, I've done this, I've done that. I've looked into every religion. Have you ever looked inside yourself? Have you ever for a moment just stopped and considered that anybody who has ever had an awakening that has revealed to them divinity or spirit or God or whatever, their true essence, whatever anybody wants to call it, it's come through them. It's not happened to them, it's come through them. So to embark upon a search for peace and well-being and happiness is a fruitless task looking outside of ourselves. It really is an internal pursuit. It really is a reflective pursuit. And starting to get a sense of it awakens us, and it makes us more like a child. It brings us back to not knowing. It brings us back to the moment. So that will be, I think, along the lines that we will have a conversation tonight. Do you say anything?
Well, just one of the stories I often mention, and I always paraphrase it, but is the Chinese story of the old man whose horse bolts, and his neighbour says, "Oh my God, this is terrible. And the farmer says, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And then the next day, his horse comes back with five mares. And his neighbour comes and says, oh, you have such good fortune. And the farmer says, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And the day after that, the boy, his son, is breaking in one of the mares, and he gets thrown off and breaks his leg. And his neighbour's like, oh, it's terrible, terrible luck. And the farmer says, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And then the next day, or a few weeks later, the army come round recruiting, and his son can't go to war because he's got a broken leg. And the neighbour comes around and says, oh, what amazing fortune. And the farmer says, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. And you can see how that can just go on forever. And I was thinking, when we're on the walk today, like we've had all these series of things not working today. We've been trying to get organised, and we've been trying to send some parcels, and we've been to 3 different places, and then we ran out of paper, so we couldn't print labels, and then the label shop, it wouldn't work, and everything's just taken forever.
It was like life was just conspiring against us, wasn't it?
And we were all ready to go on this long bike ride today, but it got to the point where, like, we haven't got time to go for a bike ride, we'll go for a walk. And then we go on this walk, and we find the lamb. So in my head, I'm like, oh, if all that stuff hadn't happened, and then we wouldn't have found the baby lamb, and then it could have been in the fence all night, and it could have died. But I see how we try and make sense of everything, and we try and say, oh, it's happened for a reason, or it's. But I think the part of the story that I love is the bit, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, we'll see. Like, we don't know, and we live as if we know something, and we try and. I think if we don't know something, we fill in the blank, we make something up. And I think when we start to see that it's all made up, it's all us filling in the blanks, I think it allows us to live more in the moment. Like we spend so much time trying to figure everything out, or trying to work out how we're going to be in the future, or trying to figure out or wish we'd been different in the past. Like, we were speaking to someone earlier, and they're saying, I should have known sooner. I should have known sooner. I should have. And we were just speaking.
Should have spotted it.
We were like, but you couldn't have. It could not have been different than what it was. And he tried to kind of almost go, oh yeah, I see that. And you're like, no, I want to come back to that point. It's something really, really important. It couldn't have been different. And I think when we see that as a truth, we stop entertaining all the ideas in our own lives or in other people's lives, thinking it should have been different than what it is. So it's like the amount of unnecessary thinking that can fall off our mind when we see that to be true is amazing. It's enormous. It's like this whole chunk of thinking falls off. Like the amount of time I used to spend and still can spend thinking I should have been different than what I was. I should have said that. I should have been more patient. I should have been kinder. And just preoccupying the moment now with an imagination of how the past could have been. And I think when we realise it's all an unknown. This whole life stuff is a mystery. Like, I think we get more and more gratitude for being here and being alive and having an experience, and less, I think you often use the word mesmerised, less and less mesmerised by our own creations, less and less mesmerised of our own lives, like how we're doing, what insights have I had, how am I doing, am I doing all right, am I doing life right?
Like a search for perfection almost, isn't it?
And I could hear in this conversation we had earlier this idea that hang on a minute, I've got this understanding now, so I shouldn't have had a sleepless night worrying about something. As if in some ways we're going to get something over life. We're going to step out of reality, recognise something, and then be able to manipulate reality. But I think the principles is just this description of how reality is created. Like, it's a description, it's a metaphor, and it can't be intellectually known. And every time we think we've got it, we've grasped at something and made it something. It's not that. And I think the more ease we live with is when we stop thinking we know something. We stop living so much out of belief, because it's our beliefs and our expectations that trip us up and we find ourselves more and more present, and that's where we're built to live. We're built to thrive in the moment, because that's what's actually happening. We have a friend, Jamie Smart, who describes it as Narnia. He said, we live in Narnia. It doesn't exist, but it seems terrifying. So when we come back to reality, it's like the relief that's found there. The relief that's found when we're just back here now. I'm all right now. And you start to realize we can deal with life. But the thing that most of us suffer is our imaginings or our ruminations. And the amount of people I've spoken to that have kind of gone through things that you're like, whoa, how have you gone through that? They said, I don't know, but it was just like moment to moment to moment, I got through it. I never thought I would be able to.
Is that another one?
I don't know, it hasn't popped up at the top. I don't really understand this new admitting people thing. Some kind of privacy, something or other.
Yeah, it is. There is an absolute freedom that is found within starting to gain understanding into life. It's not a conditional freedom. It's not bound by circumstance, the future or the past. It's not bound by finance. It's not bound by where we are located, where we live. People throughout time are testament to this point. And people often come to us like, and I remember one man, he said to me, he said, Dave, I want the freedom that you have. I said, okay, in your reality, in your world, what does this look like? And he said, it looks like you're always happy and you love everybody. I said, all right, does it? And you think that's freedom? And he said, yeah, that's what I want. I said, right. I said, well, that's not freedom. I said, first and foremost, it's not true. I said, I don't love everybody and I'm not always happy. I said, but I would consider myself to be free. I said, if you think that you should always be happy, then you've created a prison within your own mind. You've created a condition upon reality, through which if reality isn't showing up in the way that you perceive it to be, how it should be, then you will undergo the experience of suffering because of the judgment that we carry around on the experience that we're facing. I said, but you know, in true freedom, there is absolute capacity to feel and embrace all of life. You know, here we sit as beings on this earth. What are we? Where did we come from? What is life? I don't know. I don't know, but I know I should always be happy. How can we truly know anything about life when we truly don't even know its very essence? We can create concepts around its essence. We can create words around its essence. We can create beliefs around its essence. It will never be that. It's bigger than that. But to start to gain a respect for it, a true respect for it, to start to awaken up to I had no respect for the spiritual. I had no interest in spirituality. I had no interest in anything like that. But the moment I woke up to the spiritual nature of reality, life or essence or whatever you want to call it, I was free. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean it was a very simple moment of realization. It was just a moment of recognizing that reality is an illusion of consciousness, and we are all that. That everything is an illusion of the mind. And the more that I started to get interested in it, the more I found evidence for it all over the world. It's literally, we stare this evidence right in the face, apart from we stare out of it, so we don't see it. We see the creation that it has dreamt into being as our life, as our experience, and we pay very little attention to what creates the experience. And this is the difference when many people come to us and they go, yeah, I know I'm feeling my thinking. And we go, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do I'm feeling my thinking. Go beyond I'm feeling my thinking. Don't look at thinking. Looking at thinking is like trying to find the essence of a cup by staring at a cup. You're not going to find the essence of a cup by staring at the cup. You're going to have to look deeper into the cup to start to find its essence. Stop looking at what's created and start getting curious about what creates. Because as we start to look in that direction, we start to realize the only direction we truly need to look at is a reflective direction, one from within. As we start to wake up and realize that we are literally manifesting a reality all the time. That is the nature of life. That is the nature of existence, is that we literally create experience. Some experience we like and some experience we don't like. But like you could liken, I remember where's Susan at? We went for a drive with Susan around the Lake District. And we went to a little place called Brothers Water. And connected to Brothers Water via a river is another body of water called Lowes Water. And then, no, it goes Brothers Water, Crummock Water, Lowes Water. I'm probably going to get shouted at from downstairs now because I got that wrong. And you know, most people go and visit Buttermere, because Buttermere is a really, really beautiful place. You've got the beautiful scenic mountainous backdrop with these beautiful pine trees and woodland all the way around it. Anybody who's been to Buttermere, I know there's a couple of people from Cumbria on here. Anybody who ever gets a chance to go to Buttermere would just fall in love with it. It's beautiful. But then not very many people visit Crummock Water. Why? Well, aesthetically, it's not as nice as Buttermere. And then even less people visit Lowes Water. Why do less people visit Lowes Water? Well, it's not quite as aesthetically pleasing and as much of a tourist trap as Crummock and Buttermere. But when you really look at this logically, you realize that what we are studying is the creation of something, and we're living in the judgment of it. But the creation that we are living in judgment of is water. And the absolute essence of Buttermere, Crummock Water and Lowes Water actually starts high on the fell side on Haystacks. It starts as a little spring that starts on the side of Haystacks from gathered rainwater, which is held in the moss, the sphagnum moss in the top, and continuously throughout the year just releases slow amounts of water, and it just releases the water. So there's this constant stream of water. Even during the driest of years, there is a constant stream of water. And this stream, it's run into the valleys, and it's created Buttermere, Crummock Water and Lowes Water before then heading off into the sea. Buttermere, Crummock Water and Lowes Water are all one thing. And this is a metaphor that I was speaking to Susan about at the time to try and describe the nature of experience. You know, we're very quick to label good, bad, right, wrong, pretty, ugly, whatever. Pretty being Buttermere, ugly being Lowes Water. But in essence, it's all the same thing. And when people start to look at the mind, they start to find something starts to take place. Life starts to make sense, and it starts to make sense because it becomes so simple, it's been impossible for our little intellect to get its head around. And that is that life is a singular event. Life is a singular event showing up as an infinite amount of things. And when we're talking about life, we're not talking the form that's created. We're talking about the essence of it. We're talking about the spring on the side of Haystacks, the fell in the Lake District, which the spring that gives birth to the Buttermere, Crummock and Loweswater, all the waterfalls, all the meanders along the way. The things that people go and visit and go, I really like this place. I really like this. I don't like that so much. No, Loweswater, don't even bother going. It's crap. But you must go and see this waterfall on the side of Haystacks. It's beautiful. Then you've got to go and see Buttermere. And, you know, the meanders that goes between Crummock and beautiful. But Loweswater, Loweswater, don't bother. It's crap. It's ugly. I don't like it. But in essence, it's all the same thing. Without judgment, it is all exactly the same thing. It's all water. So when we start to find this, within ourselves, that our very nature is all one thing. Reality is all one thing. And this is quite a headfuck for a lot of people to try and get their heads around. It's not something you can get your head around. It's something that just reveals itself. And once it reveals itself, all the things that we've truly been trying to fix themselves. Because you realize that there is no problem outside of the mind. The problem that we have been trying to fix was a thought. And we've been trying to fix thinking with thinking. Like the ego trying to see past itself, it can't do it. So as we start to look at this, we start to look for this singular nature, and you find evidence for it. You will find the evidence for it. Once you start looking in this direction, once you start becoming curious about the nature of what is life, what is life? Truly, what is it? It will start to reveal itself. And as it starts to reveal itself, it will start to unravel the mystery that is life, only to leave you realizing that you truly don't know anything. And I was a man who used to think that knowledge was power. There's something my mate Rach wrote on here. And she said, the more we are convinced we know, the harder it is to learn. The more we are convinced we know, the harder it is to learn. It's absolutely right. The more we truly think that we know something about life, the harder it is to listen, the harder it is to learn. What is there to learn if you know everything? Everything. Life becomes more interesting when we truly realize we don't know anything. It becomes a mystical mystery. It becomes a game, like the child playing the game, playing with the mind, playing with the creation, not taking life seriously. Children don't take life seriously. Why do adults? Why do we all take life so seriously? It's a beautiful thing. And what's even more beautiful for it is that whatever reveals itself is perfect for us. It's tailor-made for our experience. It's tailor-made for our being. Whatever reveals itself, I can tell Jenny insights that I've had and she'll be like, pfft. She'll tell me yours and I'll be like, what? But it was perfect for Jenny. My insights have been perfect for me. Those are what I would call personal insights. But when you start looking for universal insights, universal being applicable to all, how I work is how Jenny works. And I'm not talking about my likes, dislikes, what's right, how I think life is and how I think that person is, or the drama we've had today. I've had drama today. I've been a frigging drama queen today. I'm talking about the fundamental nature of life. Because what is it to be alive? Well, it's the birds. And it's the insects. It's the fish. And it's the trees. It's everything. Life is a singular event showing up in an infinite amount of ways. We call it all life. Why do we call it all life? Because it's all one thing. We know that.
I was just thinking of, I used to go to a meditation group before coming across the principles, and then for a couple of years afterwards, I still used to meet up with this group, and I then didn't go for probably 8 years. And when Rudy and I were separating, I went on New Year's Eve, I went back to one of their groups, and before the meditation, you'd all sit around and kind of, you go around the group and kind of say where you're at. And it was so interesting because there was loads of the same people were still going to this group. And it was like 8 years hadn't passed, because when we went round, what people spoke about was that they wanted to meditate to overcome a certain type of thinking or a certain type of behavior they didn't like in themselves. And it was interesting listening, because it felt like, wow, you've like, even before I went to the group, they were going to this group. So 10, 15 years, you've been meditating and focusing on this thing in your life that you want to be different. And it hasn't gone anywhere. And it was just really interesting that we try the same thing over and over again. And we keep thinking, oh no, this will work, this will work. And we often don't learn from experience. And I think when I really started to see the principles, I realized what my problem was self-obsession, like totally innocent, but like this self-obsession. How am I doing? How am I doing? I don't like this part of my character. I want to change it. Let's put all my attention on that. I'm going to put all my attention on that. Isn't it weird that that's all I can see? Like, you start to see that there's a logic built into this as well. And it wasn't that the people at this meditation group were doing anything wrong, but I just thought on the break, when I got to chat to people and ask them about their lives, there'd been some beautiful things happening in people's lives. But every week they go to this group to talk about this aspect of their character that they don't like and they want to get rid of. But it's like we seem to forget all the moments where we are just living. We are just here, being like we're still here. But without the thought that we need to be different than what we are, the peace that comes from that, like we're all right. I have mental thinking, you have mental thinking, very different types of mental thinking. Like, I've looked across at Dave sometimes, like, well, what have you been thinking about? You're like, I was imagining killing people, where I bury them. And I was like, really? Your face looked pretty peaceful, but that was going on. And he'll ask me, what's been going on in your mind? And I've been like off in the future, imagining this terrible thing happening. But it's like, you see this, just what minds do. Like, minds think and they create. And I think we just get more and more comfortable with this being alive stuff. That's being human. And we also have that capacity to learn. Like, wow, yeah, have I felt like this before? Has it changed? Yeah, cool. Like, I can deal with it. We can learn.
Is this permanent?
Yeah, like you get a bit more suspicious of your experience. And I think I really believed when I came into the Through Principles community that at some point I was going to almost have this experience where I'd wake up and just never get caught out anymore. But I think that might be called like definitely death of ego. Like, but I'm really grateful that I'm alive and I get to experience. And sometimes I don't like my experience and I want it to pass and I stress about it. And other times I'll wallow in something and I'll quite enjoy wallowing in it. But I feel like when you realize it isn't personal, it's not us getting life right or wrong. It's just this nature. It's what happens. And as my attention's fallen more and more away from myself, like what I've noticed about planet Earth, and it's been helpful having you point stuff out to me, it's like, wow, all of this has been going on around me and I haven't seen it. Like, where have I been?
It's amazing. Yeah, it is amazing how much beauty we miss when we're fixated on problems. Beauty is everywhere. But whilst we're looking for answers to problems, we miss it. We miss the moment. But we don't realize that the problem is a thought. Do problems truly exist in the world? Or is it just what's happening? And then we have a judgment upon it. You know, you can take any situation and you could show 10 people and go, what's going on there? And you're going to get 10 different answers. Some may agree, some may, oh yeah, I totally agree with you there, mate. Totally agree. But keep talking, you'll start to see differences. And you'll start to see that people are literally experiencing different worlds. And you start to see that. I often use the example of America, Trump trying to buy Greenland off Denmark. Why is he trying to buy Greenland off Denmark? Well, he's trying to buy Greenland off Denmark because the ice sheet's melting. And as the ice sheet melts, they realize there are so many different minerals and ores and a lot of value under the ice in Greenland, which they can go in and mine and excavate and make profit from. So what many people in the world see as being a massive problem, Greenland's ice sheets are melting, Donald Trump's going, Greenland's ice sheets are melting? Brilliant, let's buy Greenland. And Denmark have gone, no, we're not buying, Greenland's not for sale, it's not for sale. But you see that, even when it comes to things like what look like, everybody must think that the ice sheet's melting is a problem. Not everybody is seeing it like that. In some people's worlds, it's a beautiful opportunity and it's great. And so this is what I'm talking about. The evidence for what we're talking about is everywhere. People are literally living in their own. It looks like we live in an objective reality. It looks objective. It looks so simple. That's right, that's wrong, that's good, that's blah, 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 blah. Until you sit down and have a conversation with somebody and end up in an argument. Why do we argue? Well, we argue because we think that we are seeing an objective reality, but so does the other person. But they're very different objective realities. So then we try and convince the other person that their reality is wrong and our reality is right. And then we start to look at this person and go, you are mad. There's something wrong with you because you can't see reality. Can you not see reality? What's wrong with you? It's reality, for God's sake. Humanity has been living under the illusion that reality is an external event to which they're subjected. And what Sid came to with the principles was, no, wake up. Reality is a dream, wake up. Reality is a state of consciousness, and as you think, so reality changes. Wake up. Wake up from the dream, wake up. Wake up, see it's a dream. Wake up, see everybody is dreaming a different reality. Get curious about that. Become interested in the point that everybody is literally dreaming up a different reality. No two people on earth see reality the same. No two people on earth see the same world. To me, that was one of the most interesting things I could possibly realize. That no two people on earth are seeing the same reality. There's an awful lot of people on earth, I think about 7.7 billion. And no two people on earth are seeing the same world. No two people on earth are seeing the same reality. That got me interested. Because I started to realize there was something fundamental about that fact. That no two people on earth are seeing the same reality. I realized, no, that is a fundamental observation to start to take in life. If no two people on earth are seeing the same reality, truly, where is reality? Where is reality? If no two people on earth are seeing the same reality, who is seeing the correct reality? You start to look in this direction, you start to wake up and you start to realize reality, this thing we take so seriously, the thing we're trying to run away from, escape, enhance or whatever, is all an illusion of mind. What is mind? People go, mind's God. Okay, what's God? Oh, God's energy. Okay, what's energy? We throw these words at it, thinking that somehow our little intellect can grasp hold of something. Going back to the unknown, try and realize you don't know. And as we fall into that space of unknown, beyond concepts, beyond ideas, beyond anything that we can possibly comprehend as being right, wrong, good or bad, we just fall into that space of openness, an open mind. Not a closed mind, a mind that's so entrapped by its own beliefs and ideas and ideologies, but an open mind, one which has let go of everything that it thinks is Rivki. So it's about dropping what you know to make space for the unknown. Don't have to tackle the known, just drop it. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking...
Sorry, just wake up. Question yourself. What do I truly know about life? What do I truly know that isn't something I've been told, something I've read, somebody else's opinion, something that the news has said, something that I read in the newspaper, something that I've been brought up with? Truly, what is it that I can absolutely guarantee that I know about life? What do I know about the future? What do I know about that person? That I know what they're like. I know what they'll say. What do we know about that situation? Oh, I know what it's going to be like. It's going to be terrible. What do we truly know? And how much does thinking we know something create suffering and paralysis in life? Look at it. Really look at it. Question it. What is life? That fundamental question. What is life? It's unknowable. It's unknowable, yet here we are. The essence of life is unknowable because it's not a concept. To know something is a conceptualization. It's form taken. Stop looking at the form. When we stop looking at the form and we start getting curious about what creates, you find magic. But you find that you are that magic. There was a beautiful statement by Jesus as well that said, sorry, whoever's just joined, this isn't anything to do with religion. Just a statement that I really love. And he just said, but if you do not know yourself, you will dwell in poverty. But it is you that are that poverty. But as you start to get to know yourself, and I don't mean the ego, as we start to get to know ourselves, as in we start to become aware that what we truly are is beyond anything we can know. Who are we? Who is this observer of thought? Who is this observer of feelings? Who is this observer of reality? Oh, it's Dave. Oh no, Dave. Dave was a name given to me by my family. No, I'm not that. I could have been James. I was nearly James. Or perhaps I prefer to take on my middle name of Alex. Perhaps I'll take on Alex. Some people call me Ellery. Some people call me Dickhead. Many people call me Dickhead. I respond to anything. But you see, even our name is part of the illusion. Where do you live? They're just words. And the more we start to recognize words, ideas, concepts, these are all manifestations, they're all creation, they're all objectified thought. The more we start to look beyond that and get curious about what is this stuff, where is it coming from? Who are we? What is life? It opens up the mind to something far bigger and more beautiful than our ego can possibly comprehend or handle. The ego cannot handle it, and it will collapse the ego in a moment. It will collapse everything that we think we know about life in a moment. And we fall back into the unknown. And we're in that unknown. Yeah, Rach, you're absolutely right. We're free to listen and learn, but from a new place of openness. And to me, openness is, an open mind is a beautiful mind. A closed mind is one that will struggle a lot. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we had, just before everything kind of ground to a halt in the UK, we'd just got funding to do the project out in Burundi with probably 20 religious, tribal and armed group leaders from the Congo. So we were really excited by it, and we managed to get a phone call with a man who people in the UK will probably know of, Terry Waite, who was held hostage for 4 years, I think end of the 80s, early 90s in Beirut. He's got a beautiful book written about his experience there. But when we were chatting to him a bit about this idea of going out and doing work in Burundi, in Africa, we were asking him a bit about his experience, because he's done loads of stuff in Rwanda, Uganda, and kind of all over. And he just was like, oh yeah, you'll be safe enough in Burundi. You know, I had my young family out in Rwanda with me. We got held up a few times at gunpoint, but it's just what happens. And, you know, you get through it. And he was so blasé about all these different things and told us some different stories. And you can see how, and it wasn't kind of him trying to be anything. It was just, to him, he's lived a life of service. I mean, he's gone into countries all around the world who are in a state of war. He's gone in to try and mediate. He's gone to try and rescue refugees and negotiate their release. And then he had 4 years in captivity. And when you either read or listen to his book, you hear him speak about beautiful childhood memories that he lives in when he's chained to a wall, and then he is in absolute terror and fear about what they might do to him, and then he's just in pain thinking about his family and where they might be and how they might be, and just the not knowing. And then he's in absolute peace, and he's experienced a sense of God in a deeper way than he ever thought before. And it's like, it was so cool listening to him read his book, because you could see that he was chained to a wall and he was in one room, but his mind was free, and it was free to think anything. And it was such a, we want to interview him speaking about this for the website, but also to show school children, because we are so bought into this idea that our mind's free if, and my mind will be free if these circumstances are favourable, or
I'll be all right when.
And he really is that, he's resilient. And it's not that he would have chosen to have that experience, I don't think, if you asked him, but what he learned through it, and the depths of, he was a religious man. He had a real respect for God, but what he experienced through it was this deeper sense of God and truth. And it was such a privilege really to have a conversation with him, and hopefully, again, when we're allowed to see people, we'll interview him. But I loved how the way that he spoke about working in Africa was like, yeah, you'll be fine. Just, it's awesome that you've got that funding. Go and do that. And then with my mum and dad, they're like, do not go. It's the most dangerous thing. You're going to die. It's selfish if you go. And it's like just different perspectives. And it's like, it's...
My mum and dad are like, when are you going? When are you going? God, why don't you go now?
But you can also see how it felt like everything was like flowing, and we were following inspiration, and suddenly we had the funding and it was all going to happen. And then it was like, nope, you're not allowed to travel. And we're like, oh, all of our travel plans have been cancelled for the year. And we're like, well, how much thinking have we done about leaving Rusty, and how Rusty's going to deal with life without us, and worried about it, and ummed and ahed about a beautiful trip to, we should be in Costa Rica right now for Dave's 170th. Yeah. And we almost didn't sign up to go to that because we were worried about leaving Rusty. And then suddenly it's like it's cancelled anyway. So you see that the mind will still run into the future. So it's not, this isn't any kind of learn this and then your mind won't do that.
But it's just pure evidence of the unknown.
Well, it's just knowing that that's just what the mind does. And so many things for us seemed planned and flights booked and set in stone for this year that they're not happening. And you realise that we're always in the unknown. We are always living in the unknown. But it just seems like certain things are known and we attach to them. So then if it doesn't work out, then we feel like our well-being's tied into it, but it never was. Because it was an imagined thing. And I think I've felt so privileged to have this understanding within since I've come across it, but especially over the last few months, because I've been sent a lot of like conspiracy theory, a lot of all kinds of stuff to do with corona and this person's opinion, and watch this video and this scientist, and a few of them I've watched, but I keep coming back, I don't know. Like the amount of things, what we've been told isn't the truth. I don't know. And I remember we met a guy at a standing stones up in Scotland called Cairn Holy. And Dave's mum asked him, well, how long have they been here?
To me, he was a good scientist.
Yeah, and he goes, well, I was here 10 years ago. So I know that they were here 10 years ago. And I've seen a photograph of them from the war. So I can pretty much say that they were here during whatever war it was.
Second World War it was.
But apart from that, I don't know. And it was like, you can see how easy it is to kind of take on other people's beliefs. But he really was just like, well, I know that I was here, so it was here 10 years ago. And I can pretty much say that it was here in the wall because I've seen this photograph. And I love that, because we kind of attach to ideas as if they're true and factual.
And then we miss deeper points, don't we? And we miss other potentials.
And he was saying, if you observe anything, you can learn.
Yeah.
And he's been observing it like for 10 years. Like, he loves this place. He had a beautiful experience there, so he observes it, and he's noticed stuff, and he's noticed another standing stone in the distance, but he'd been observing it.
4 miles away, isn't it?
But he'd been observing this place for about 4 or 5 years before he saw that thing. And he just said,
And he said, the moment I saw that, he said, this all started to make more sense.
Things like, you can learn anything through observation. We can just learn.
That was one that was such a beautiful statement. He said, you look at anything long enough and you'll start to learn about it. That is the gift that mind is. It's like one of the things we often do to people is we'd say to people, pick something up and tell us about it. And they'll look at something and they'll go, well, it's plastic, it's clear on top, black on the bottom. And I remember, Mark, you and I did this one day with a set of car keys. Tell me about your car keys, tell us about this pen. And you realise that wherever you focus consciousness, the mind thinks. It does it whether we like it or not. It does it whether we're aware of it or not. Wherever we focus attention, mind thinks, and then reality is created as a consequence of it. The experience or the flavour of reality is created as a consequence of that. However we think about something. It's interesting, you can see, you'll spot it, you'll start to see it. It's like wherever we focus attention, our experience, our reality takes place. And this is the gift of consciousness. It creates, it is the creator. This singular force that creates all right, wrong, good, bad, blah, blah, blah. It creates all of it. And we become so afraid of life. Some people become I was terrified of life. And then one day I woke up and I realized I'm terrified of my own mind. Because the only reality I can possibly experience is the one that's created within. I am terrified of my own mind. What is my mind? I don't know, but I know it's magic. It's not the brain. The brain works because of a mind. We know that when the mind leaves the body, the brain remains. But that body is totally useless. It's rendered useless. It now becomes food. Without a mind, a body has no value, has no use. We're forever focusing on the body and assuming this is who we are. We pay very little respect to the spiritual, the energy that enlivens the body, that lives the body, that is us. The true us. The true us that was never incarnated. It can't be incarnated. The body is incarnated, but our essence is always one of a spiritual nature. It takes form with thought. This is the nature of it. It takes form with thought. The soul thinks. And as it thinks, it creates a life for itself, a life that looks true, objective, and real. Until it starts to ponder and starts to reverse engineer itself and realize and look at all these other beings doing the same thing. And each one of us is seeing a totally different reality. And it starts to reverse engineer reality and starts to wake up and say, oh no, the reality is actually coming from me, not from the world. And as we start to wake up and realize that reality is coming from me, we start to wake up to who we are. And we start to wake up to who we are, and we find we're magic. I want to just quickly introduce somebody. Rach, can you just put your hand up? Give a wave. This is our mate Rach. Riv, do you know Rach? Oh, Rach, you know Rivki? Your neighbours. Leanne, I know you know Rivki, but Leanne, do you know Rachel?
Just because they all live in Johannesburg doesn't mean
they all live in Glen Hazel.
Leanne doesn't live in Glen Hazel.
Leanne, do you not live in Glen Hazel?
Riff, do you live in Glen Hazel? And Rach, too?
Rach, you live in Glen Hazel?
Just because
Yes! Full house!
It's the only name of places you know in Johannesburg.
You're all South African, of course you know each other. Well, Rach, everybody, this is Rach. Rach is one of our fantastic, beautiful friends. And Jenny and I are doing a retreat on the 23rd to the 25th of this month. It's a 3-day retreat. We're having to do it online. We were going to do an in-person one, but obviously with Corona, it's not going to go ahead. So we're going to do it online. So if anybody has any friends or family that they think may be interested in a 3-day immersion into this, where we can spend 3 days looking in this direction. I know lockdown's pretty severe in South Africa at the moment. It's steady away in the UK, and Sweden doesn't give a shit. So you can just go off and do whatever the hell you lot get up to.
Sweden just trusts people have common sense.
Yeah, these Swedish people don't go around licking people, do they? South Africans stop licking each other. But Rach is one of our guest speakers. And we're going to take a quick break now. But Rach, if you've got anything to say after the break, it would be lovely to hear, because I'd love people to get to meet you. So we'll just take a 10-minute break. I'm not going to bother doing the world time zone thing because I always get it wrong.
Ours says it's 8:07, so we're going to come back at 8:17, but 10 minutes from whatever your clock says from now.
It's 10 minutes. Just come back in 10 minutes. Right, cool. Thanks, everyone. Pause. Right. We call her Little Rach. Like, which Rach? Little Rach. And we call her Little Rach because we know that many Raches, but she's the youngest. So, Rach, Little Rach. I'd just like to, if you could unmute yourself, I'd like to talk to you.
I want to find out if you're on a hammock.
Yeah, what are you sat on? A giant tights. Oh, right.
You do look really tiny. You are Little Rach.
You're on a giant's tights. Rach, are you happy with us if we...
It's bedtime over now for your brother and sister.
Yeah, thank God. It's good now.
Cool, Rach. Rach, thanks for joining us, love.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'd love people to get to meet you. To us, you're one of our special people in our life. And we met at a time when life wasn't too easy, was it?
No.
Could you talk a little bit about it?
So, at the time, there was quite a lot. Sorry if you can hear my family in the background.
I'll just mute them.
That would be very useful. At the time, there was quite a bit going on in my life. I think I was about 15, 16 at the time. I had been diagnosed with arthritis when I was 13. I'm a ballet dancer, so that wasn't too welcome. I had a lot of trouble with the concept of not really moving on. I was pretty convinced at that point that it's pretty useless to care about people because you're only going to lose them. It's pretty redundant to put your effort into anything because it's just going to crumble. And it was around that time that David Jenner in South Africa, and a friend of mine essentially blackmailed me into coming to one of the meetings. And just hearing about everything, it felt like, I think I said at the time, it's like being told something I already know and that I've forgotten. It's the metaphor I used to think about it now is it's like living life and getting shocked every single time that a wall of water hits you, and trying to work out every time, why was I hit by that wall of water, and thinking about the previous one instead of looking out for the next. And this was sort of kind of turning around and realizing that you're standing on the seashore and there's a whole ocean of water, and it wasn't about okay, how do I deal with what happened, or how do I deal with the inevitable coming next. It was understanding what is the ocean, what is the essence of what is going on. And it was a pretty difficult journey. But it's when you're in a place like that, you get into a really bad headspace, and a negative place, and that is all there is. You're convinced that you've never been happy before, you will never be happy again, and this is how it will be for eternity. And it was just like Dave and Jen like really just showed me how what you feel in the moment is what you feel in the moment. It's not, it's your eternity for that second, but it's not, it's a tiny piece of that eternity. And there's nothing wrong with the way, whatever you feel, you feel. There's no avoiding it. It's about accepting it. Yeah. So.
I love that, Rach. It's eternity for that second. It's that's really so beautifully put. I remember you and I walking through Pedmarsh, and I remember you saying, why does it feel like everything? You know, when you're really fucking caught in it, why does it feel like everything? And it's because it is eternity in that second. It is all that there is in that moment. It is everything in that moment. That's why it feels like everything, because it is everything. Why does it feel permanent? Because the moment's permanent, and that's what we're experiencing now. I love that, Rach. That's beautiful. You've come up with some really beautiful statements. I mean, I remember one time we were talking to you, and we said, you know, when you started to gain understanding, and you know, you said, no, I didn't understand it. It understood me. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, I do.
Could you talk a bit about that? What did that mean to you in that moment?
It was, instead of me having to apply what I'd learned and what I'd now been exposed to, I didn't have to apply that to my life. It was already in my life. I just had to recognize it. It was already, like, even at the time, I remember, I think I mentioned it to you the first time I met you. I was speaking about like how with arthritis for like a long time I'd let my arthritis be me. I couldn't dance, I couldn't do this, because that was who I was, and was the understanding that I came to understand that it's just a facet of who I am. It's not controlling to. I'm a person, and that's a side effect of being me. And when I came across this, I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was doing. I just didn't realize it. And because I didn't understand what I had done, I couldn't recognize it in my life. I don't know how clear I'm being, but when I say it understood me, it was already there. I just had to recognize it, essentially. Yeah.
I also remember, thanks, Rach. I also remember, because we got to meet Rach because we gave a talk in Glen Hazel, and for those that know Rivki and Leanne, is Leanne still here?
No, but she normally goes to bed.
Oh,
it's 9:30 there.
Yeah, Rivki, you know Tova. Tova arranged this talk, and a girl called Ashira came up to us and said, yeah, whatever you're saying, great. I've got this friend who's really struggling. How do I talk to her? What do I tell her? And I always remember the time, because it was one of those moments where Jen went, well, could you get her along, and perhaps we could have a speak, you know, perhaps we could have a conversation with her. And, no, she won't. I know. So I know something. She won't come. And Jen said, well, why don't you get all her friends together, and you know, perhaps if we can help support the friendship circle, they can help support your friend, who happens to be Rach. Anyway, so 2 days later, in Glen Hazel Way, 18 people, was it 16 or 18? 16 or 18, 16 to 21-year-old girls were sat around this table. And I remember we were about an hour in, and all of a sudden this little voice comes out of the crowd and just said, she was talking about the mind. And she just said, it's like fire. You get burnt by it. And once you get burnt by it, you become afraid of it. But when you're afraid of it, you never truly get to experience the warmth it can bring you. And we were like, who said that? And you leant forward, Rachel, and were like, you, we like you. You can come again. And I remember it was one of those moments where it was like you knew somebody had seen something, somebody had realized something, and you have this beautiful way of articulating, and you have this, I mean, Jenny and I often have conversations with Rach, and we do it because it's not to teach her or anything like that. It's because we're really curious as to, Rach, how are you seeing this now? We know that you've seen this to a depth, a really beautiful depth, and you've sent us things like, in fact, I spoke about this today. You once sent us a thing that you wrote at school about Stockholm Syndrome. I think we've got Swedish people on tonight, so those that aren't familiar with Stockholm Syndrome, it's when the captive falls in love with the captor. And they called it Stockholm Syndrome because of something that happened in Stockholm. I don't know the ins and outs. But Rach, you wrote this beautiful thesis on Stockholm Syndrome, and your story starts off about this girl who was, and then this other person who fall in love with their captors. And I remember the last sentence, the last paragraph even, to me was just fucking awesome. And it's when you just speak about, but we all suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. Could you talk a bit about that?
So,
sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No. What I mean by that is, whatever we go through, everyone develops some sort of coping mechanisms. And those mechanisms could be great, positive, whatever you want, or they can be extremely negative, whether this be the extremes of cutting or drug use. All of this is just a way for us to manage what we're going through. And we come to depend so much on these things that even when we realize how negative they are for us, even when we recognize what I'm doing is causing further damage to me, we can't leave them behind because we've become so attached to them. Who are we without this thing, this coping mechanism? Who am I? How do I define myself? How do I cope with what I'm going through without all these walls I've built up? And just to break out of that, even if you see, like when I was, after I was recovering from my depression, I was I don't know, like, what am I without it? How do I, because I'd let it define me for so long, and there was a sort of comfort in not feeling. There's a comfort in not having to deal with things and people and just escaping. And to break free of that, it's exactly the same as trying to escape from a captive for whom you've developed affections. It's that same imprisonment, except in our own mind. Does that explain?
Yeah, it's a beautiful, when I read that, I was like, yes, Rach. It's like we all become so attached to our creations, our beliefs, our ideologies, and who we think we are, and we don't realize that ultimately is the true source of suffering. It's like when you wrote about Stockholm Syndrome, and you brought this up, I was like, fucking all right, yeah, brilliant. But it is that we become so attached to our ideas of what we think keeps us safe. It's like we walk around, many people walk around with this suit of armor on. And we think this suit of armor keeps us safe. What is this suit of armor? Well, it's everything that I know about the world. It's what I know. Keeps me safe. Knowledge is power, don't you know? Knowledge is power. But we don't realize we're walking around in this suit of armor, but there's nobody at war with us. We're not at war. And there's something that happens after a little while of living inside a suit of armor. You might feel safe, but sooner or later it becomes heavy and stuffy. Then we become afraid to take it off. And you're absolutely right. We become so attached and fall in love with our creations. And there's a thing that Sydney Banks would say. He would say, there is no peace to be found in beliefs. There is no peace found in beliefs. You know, I only have beautiful beliefs now. I only have beautiful beliefs. And but we will defend our beautiful beliefs if somebody will challenge them. We will defend them. If somebody challenges, pushes our belief system, pushes our ego, we will defend it. Why don't make me feel unsafe. Captor.
We've had a question, Rach, which I'd love you to, to have a go at answering. I'd love to hear what you'd say. It says, so how do we turn off those coping mechanisms?
That's not an easy question. It isn't something that happens deliberately. You don't wake up one morning and go, right, that's it. We're done with that. Chuck that out the window. No longer need that. It's something that comes with time and just a better understanding of who you are. When you accept what you're feeling for what it is, this is my personal experience, when you accept, okay, what I'm feeling is okay, I don't have to run from it, I don't have to fight it. For right now in this moment, I just have to feel it. And then we aren't trapped in a battle with ourselves. And as like they were saying, and if there's no battle being fought, there's no need to use those weapons and those coping mechanisms. And I know it sounds all up in the air. The more we fight things like our coping mechanisms, the more prevalent they are. The more Terry Pratchett, for example, he talks about ignorance. We choose our field of knowledge. We choose. He was in terms of an award he got, literacy, and exactly we're celebrating ignorance. I have chosen to be knowledgeable about literacy, and I know nothing about anything else. That is it. We have so as soon as you've chosen to understand who you are, it's what we were saying earlier about focus. That when you understand who you are and what you're feeling for what it is, then it'll come eventually. I don't have a solid list, point A, B, C, tick it off and done. It's, yeah, I don't know. Personal experience. So.
I like that, Rach. I liked it when you said it's not something you can just wake up and choose to do. It's something that literally dawns upon us, or over time it unveils itself. Mm. And as it unveils itself, life becomes easier. For me personally, that's how it revealed itself for me. I had a life-changing insight, but that wasn't the end. That was simply a new beginning. And you know, you have to ask yourself the question: why am I adopting? What am I actually adopting these coping mechanisms for? What ultimately is it that I'm trying to cope with? And if you push anybody on that one, you will always bring it back to a thought and a feeling, because that will be the essence of it. That has to be the essence of it. And, you know, what I heard in you speaking just then, Rach, was an awful lot of acceptance. I remember going to the Manjushri, the Buddhist temple down the road from us, and I remember hearing a Buddhist monk speak about the true power of acceptance. Acceptance, to me, in my way of thinking, is simply seeing the world how it sits without judgment. Simply seeing ourselves how we sit without judgment. So it is in any experience without the judgment of right or wrong, good or bad. It's just presence. That to me is what acceptance is. And acceptance is something that has the capacity to heal in a moment. I love your metaphor of the war, Rach. It's like when we're at war, there's no peace found at war. As long as we are at war, there is never peace found. You know, you cannot bomb your way or fight your way to peace. It's never ever happened, hasn't that? Fighting and conflict has only ever created pain. The moment we stop fighting, peace emerges. It's an interesting point. The moment we put down the weapons, the peace emerges.
Also, I remember, I think second time, so someone asked, you're talking about how everyone is innately healthy, and someone, I think Tova asked, like, how can we say that everyone's innately healthy when they have these coping mechanisms? Someone's using drugs, they're not healthy. And I remember saying then that the coping mechanisms and the way we deal with life doesn't make us, we're expressing ourselves in an unhealthy way, but we are still healthy, we're still whole. And it's just the way we're expressing and the way we're dealing with things. It doesn't mean we're broken, it doesn't mean we messed up, it doesn't mean that we have completely ruined all our chances at life. It just means that that's the way we're expressing ourselves, and it's just recognizing that innate health and that innate wholeness of being.
I liked what you said as well earlier about it's recognizing who we are and what life is, and then the rest kind of takes care of itself. And in a way, it's like you start recognizing what we're afraid of. It's like we wouldn't come up with coping mechanisms for a dream that we've had at night. Like there wouldn't be any sense in that, because we get that it's a dream. So we don't come up with coping strategies to deal with that dream. And I think when you were talking about when we get a sense more of who we are and what life is, it kind of takes care of itself, because it seems less logical to work on a creation. But I do think those two things that you said about knowing more who we are and knowing more what life is are just such deep points. And I think that's why it then starts to take care of itself. Because I remember when we used to speak to you when we first got back from South Africa, you'd be like, I don't really know what it all is, but life's different. And we were like, we'd try and get you to talk about it. And I feel like over the time we've known you, you've just got more and more articulate, and you've just seen more and more. And I remember you talking to us about one of the classes you're in where they were saying you have to worry to show you care. And you were like, that is not true.
Can you talk about that? Because that's an interesting one.
It was actually, so that wasn't the first time I came across that. I get very stressed, and my dad would say to me, oh, it just means that you care. If you're stressed about it, it means you care about it, you're worried about it succeeding. And I hadn't thought about it for a long time, and we were discussing, is stress useful? This is what the topic of the conversation was in class, and someone said, of course it is, it shows you care. If you don't stress, you're not going to get anything done. You're not going to do anything to the best of your ability. And I remember sitting back, and I did try to argue the points, but I gave up, because you can't force people to see things. But just thinking that, no, stressing about something isn't an expression of caring, it's an expression of fear. And yes, we can fear things happening to things or people or events that we care about, but that isn't the proof of love. It's not a proof of care. To constantly worry about something isn't, it's not the stamp of validation that says, oh, you care. There's perfectly viable ways of dealing with things that you care about without having to stress about them, and doing it because you love them, and coming at it from a place of peace, and wanting that person who you're dealing with, or the events that's happening, just wanting to succeed and wanting to grow. That's care. That's love. Love is not worrying that if you step out of your front door, you'll be hit by a car. That's not loving life. That's being scared of life and the volatility of life, essentially. Yeah.
I don't know what comes to mind, but I know over the last nearly 3 years since we met you, you know, stuff's happened in your life. Like there's been events that you wouldn't have necessarily chosen, but every time we've spoken to you, like there's been this perspective. So I don't know if, I won't say any specific ones, but if anything comes to mind of things you have navigated over the last few years, that you could speak to.
One thing I can't speak about is, I mentioned earlier that I have arthritis. 2 of my sisters were diagnosed as well. And for no logical reason, that made me feel incredibly guilty. I felt like it was my fault. And also, yeah, there were people in my life that came and went, not through any fault of my own. And it was just learning that it's the same thing about worrying and about love, that you can love someone and you can care about someone, but that shouldn't come at the cost of your own happiness. And you shouldn't ever be in a position that you care so much about someone that you're willing to give up your happiness for theirs. I argue that there are cases that this can be, but if your concern is taking care of someone else, but you yourself aren't healthy, then you need to sort out your priorities. It's actually a great metaphor was, I did a first aid course through my school, and they always said to us, the first thing you do when you get to, say, an accident scene, a trauma scene, is check if the area is safe. An injured hero doesn't help anyone. An injured hero is a burden on the people they're supposed to be helping. If someone runs into a burning building to save someone, and you now got 2 hurt people instead of 1, and yeah, it sounds a bit selfish, but at times you do need to channel that selfishness and just make sure that you're it doesn't have to be a positive space, but you're in a place of self-care and acceptance.
Yeah, that speaks really highly to one of our friends called Mahima, who was in the, I think some people may know Mahima, but she was the reason why we went out to Nepal. And she was in Kathmandu during the first earthquake, and when the first earthquake kicked off, people were terrified. They picked up the kids and they ran outside the house, and the earth was shaking. And Phil, good to see you, dude. Thanks for joining us, man. Good to see you, buddy. And Mahima noticed that once the earth stopped shaking, once the ground stopped shaking, her niece burst into tears. And then not long after that, the first aftershock came, and she stopped crying, and she was like, as a little niece, 2 or 3 years old, Mika. And everybody else was terrified. And Mahima's looking at Mika going, you like it when the earthquake's happening. I hate it when the earthquake's happening. And it was in that moment where she realized she'd read a book years ago, and all she'd read in this book was, she picked it up, she'd opened it in the airport and read one sentence: 100% of experience is coming from the power of thought in the moment. She closed the book and she put it down. And it was during this moment of seeing Mika enjoying the earthquake, the thing that everybody else was terrified of, this one little kid was going, I love the earthquake, this is brilliant, I'm really sad when it's finished. This sentence came back: 100% of earthquake, 100% of experience is coming from the power of thought in the moment. And she saw that Mika thought differently about the earthquake and therefore had a totally different experience or reality of the same situation. And she said in that moment, the moment she saw that happen, she saw what was going on in her own mind. And the moment she saw what was going in her own mind, she said, I fell into this space of peace. She said, I knew I wasn't physically safe, but I knew I was psychologically safe. I knew I was psychologically safe. I knew that the earthquake couldn't hurt me psychologically. I know the earthquake couldn't create fear. If the earthquake created fear, Mika would be experiencing fear, but she's not. She's experiencing a different reality. And later on, she said something. I remember listening to her in an interview. She said there was something so useful for people having a person sat in sanity when everybody else was in total stress and meltdown. There was something so useful about her being in a logical present state of mind. She was more useful to people around her in that space than she would have been if she'd been joining them, as you put it, like running into a burning fire and getting burnt with the rest of the people who are getting burnt. But she wasn't. She was on the outside of it. And it's like he could, one of the things Sydney Banks would say is be selfish. He said, but understand that being selfish is the greatest gift you can offer people. It's not being selfish and being, it's all mine kind of thing. No, it's be selfish in looking after your own world. Be selfish in looking after your own sanity. If you meet somebody with insanity who is insane, you've just got a shite load of insanity. But if you meet somebody who's insane, for want of a better word, and you're in presence and peace of mind, clarity of mind, then that relationship's going to be very different. If that relationship is 50% and 50% and both 50% are in insanity, then that's 100% insanity. But if 50% of it is in insanity and the other 50% is in sanity, is in peace of mind, is in presence, that's a very different relationship. That's a very different relationship. And it's comforting for people, it's really useful. One of the nicest things I think many people find when they come across the principles is, oh no, I'm all right. And people don't view them, people who share the principles don't view people as broken. Oh, there's somebody fucking, you really fucked up now, aren't you? You are fucked for the rest of your life. God bless you. Oh, you're a write-off. I can't do anything with you. I can't work with you. People who come across the principles who have seen something into it know that everybody, as you so beautifully put at the beginning of this, is innately healthy. They're just showing up a different symptom of coping. Yeah. Thanks, Rach. Does anybody have any questions for Rach? Or questions for anybody? Does anybody else want to say anything? Any observations?
Hello.
Hiya, Karen.
Hello. I want to share a little nice story that happened to me recently. It has nothing to do with what you're talking about, but I think it's a nice story.
Great.
So I share it, yes. Last week I was going for a walk with a friend of mine nearby, and when I came home, I suddenly noticed that my ring on my little finger was gone. And for some reason, that was my engagement ring that for a very long time back, that engagement ring. I was engaged with that guy 78 and 82. We have 2 marks in the same ring. And I just found it in my, where I have my rings. And I think, well, that must look nice on my little finger because it doesn't fit my ordinary finger. But and I put another ring over it because it shouldn't fall off. Anyway, I was out for that walk with my friend. And when I get home, I found that my ring was gone. There was no ring on my finger. And I felt a little bit sad because that ring I have kept for many, many, many years. But still, I think that is just a thought. It's not a big deal. But that today I went over to my friend again and I said, last time we met, I lost a ring on my finger. And she said, well, on the Facebook today, there was someone who was talking about that she found a ring. And I would try to find that again. And she did. And she found that person, and it was my
Oh,
engagement ring. So today I got it back. I haven't get it yet, but she said, "Yeah, it was my husband. We have a wood behind me, and it was in that wood that her husband was going out and find something that was glittering in the wood, and that was my ring." And I think, yeah, life is.
that'll teach you for going somewhere you shouldn't. Oh no, that's beautiful.
I think
So I
it's
just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
I think it's also like a great demonstration of like thought. Like you were saying, you were sad because this was a ring you'd had for a long time, and that just shows how much we are creatures of thought. If it was a ring, a plastic ring that you had bought yesterday at a flea market, you wouldn't have had that same reaction to losing the ring. And that, I think that's just an amazing demonstration of how we are like it is about thoughts, and it's not the experience that creates the thoughts. If it was the experience losing the ring, you would have been a lot upset about a plastic ring that you bought at the flea market. But it's the thoughts and the memory and the mental capacity that makes that experience what it is.
So life is, isn't it?
Beautiful. Thank you.
You remember when we went to the Buddhist temple that Sunday?
Yeah.
And she was talking about how like cars break down, and like why do people worry about, that's the nature of cars. Cars are made and that's what they do, they break down, but suddenly when they break down on you when you're driving it, you think it's bad. And I really saw something in that it was like, yeah, the world outside is just doing exactly what it's perfect, apart from the thinking that it shouldn't happen. Which was like, yeah, it was really cool. I really saw something when she said that. It was
That's
like,
beautiful, dude.
yeah.
Mark, you're another really insightful man who's really seen stuff into this.
Yeah, yeah. And the more I stop thinking about it and just go with it, the more I don't try and analyze it anymore. And like I got the big insight from you, which was like, I really don't know anything. But I mean, like, I really don't know anything. And that was massive for me, because when you just realize that you haven't got a clue from next second to next second, you're more in the now. So you're not futurism. You're not going into the future all the time looking at stuff, because you just don't know, do you? And it's brilliant at work, because now when people ask me stuff, I say, I don't know.
You do find yourself saying that, don't you?
Yeah.
In our family at the moment, they're going, I remember, like, we've had many conversations, and like the COVID-19 stuff on the news, and we've been having conversations, and like, how many people have died? 680. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. It's like, I remember having a conversation with one of the South African, Riv, and oh no, she's gone. Riv will remember this person, but I remember having this conversation with this lady about terrorism, and she was talking about Syria, and I don't know about other parts of the world, but in the UK we were shown people having been showered. Literally just showed that we had like 10-second video footage on a mobile phone of people, women and children and men, showering quickly. And we were told, that was all we were shown, and then it was for weeks, it was all about this gas attack in Syria. And I remember this lady going, well, what do you think about what's happening in Syria? I said, I don't know what's happening in Syria. Well, haven't you seen the news? Yeah, I've seen the news, but I don't know what's happening in Syria. And she got really, really mad with me. And she actually said, I don't want you to be my... You're
a mentor.
Yeah, she didn't want me to be a mentor anymore. But I pointed out to her, I said, look, I said, I come from a country that was fed the news that Iraq and Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And we were fed that for months, continuously on the news. And then we go and pray, and we go and blow up Iraq, and we kill Saddam Hussein, and we install a new government that is pro the West. and we secured an oil field. And they turned out there was no weapons of mass destruction, and we admitted there was no weapons of mass destruction to be found. And I said, but, you know, people idly believed that Iraq housed weapons of mass destruction because they were told so. I said, so you have to forgive me. I said, because I exercise my free will, my gift of free will, my gift to believe what I want to believe, my gift to remain an open mind. And in a time when we are facing a massive challenge globally, I mean, we were already talking about a global recession. I won't go into my ideas about that too much, other than to say that money is completely made up by mankind. Therefore, so is the recession. But people idly believe what they hear and read and are told. We have this beautiful gift of skepticism. And I remember hearing this man who was on I forget what book it was, but I was listening to this talk, and this man was speaking about how he said we have people who are called skeptics. It almost comes with a really kind of negative. Oh, he's a skeptic, Eurosceptic, this skeptic, climate skeptic. You know, it comes with a kind of negative connotation. Skeptics, negative. Believe everything you're told. Don't be a skeptic. But this man said, the greatest gift we have as beings of this earth is the gift of skepticism. To be skeptical. And he said, be skeptical of everything that you are told. Question it. Be skeptical of everything that you hear, everything you read, everything you see. And then he finished it off by saying, but most of all, be skeptical about everything that you think. And I feel like we're at a time now where we are facing massive social challenges. This is where more and more the gift of a free mind will come into its own. When you realize your mind is free to think, to come out of the known and back into the unknown. Oh, it's going to be terrible. You know, we need to get the economy going. The economy is made up, by the way, it's made up by mankind. The economy doesn't actually exist outside of the agreement of mankind. It's not real. A blade of grass is more real than the entire global economy. Just putting that out there. But, oh, you know, we all need to be vaccinated. We all need this. There'll be no travel. You can do this. They're all going to, Big Brother's going to be all over us. I don't know. Like Mark just so beautifully said, I don't know 1 second to the next what's going to happen. How can I know what's going to happen in 10 years, in 10 days time, 10 weeks time, 10 months time, 10 years time? I don't know. And when we come out of all these knowns and we find ourselves back in the unknown, it's amazing the space and peace of mind within our consciousness. It's amazing that space of peace that emerges from falling back into the unknown. Our truest state is one of unknown. We're made of unknown. What is life? Go back to that first question of tonight. What is life? It's a divine mystery. And yet we all walk through the world thinking we know something about it. Rach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. It's so beautiful to have you. We will do another one of these.
We have got one booked in 2 weeks today.
Yeah,
so I don't know
whatever
what
date that is, figure it out.
Hang on. I think it's 28.
Okay, don't figure it out. We're going to tell you.
28th.
28th.
That's, yeah, 28th in the UK. And just, yeah, so 23rd to the 25th, we've got a retreat, Jenny and I. It's 3 days. Anybody who's interested or knows somebody who would be interested, push them in our direction. I think all the information is on freedomthinking.co.uk, isn't it?
Yeah, and on Facebook.
And on Facebook, which is
We're
Freedom.
doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
We'll be there. Birthday weekend we'll spend with you.
Oh,
We were with you last birthday weekend, weren't we?
We were, yeah.
Can I just say something as well before you go?
Yeah.
It's like you call yourself Freedom Thinking, and that's what I found with you. For myself, I know I found it with me, but it was you that guided me to it, and it's the exact right word because I do feel free now. So it's a perfect name for it, isn't it?
do you know why we called it Freedom Thinking?
Because you knew I was coming.
No, it's because all of the domain names were taken.
But it was perfect though. That just shows how perfect it was, doesn't it?
It was my mate Sarah Ellery that actually came up with it.
Yeah. But it is, isn't it? I found freedom.
Bless you all.
And Mark actually has a book out at the moment, and it's on Amazon.
Oh, by the way,
And
it's
it's
so
called-
beautiful to read.
Mark,
What's it
Mark,
called?
what's the book called?
What's your book called?
Oh, I forgot. What's it called? A New World something or something
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
and Mark, and it's on Amazon.
I love the subtitle. The most important book for a generation.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that was the American bit, you know, we had to sell it, didn't we?
By Mark Dennis.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Mr.
No
Tree,
problem.
thank you for joining us.
Don't forget to look at that link. I sent
Right.
you.
No, I won't, Mark. I will. I won't.
Bye, see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, love. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.